Okay, so this is the AutoText and similar presets in Clever Online. So I suppose the background is how does kind of Clever Online work before I went near it, and what's changed, and how this all fits together. So just there is PS3 output of col.WSD just to see what processes are involved as the background. So you have this col.WSD server that talks to the outside world on the left hand side. On the right hand side, then you have various kit brokers. So each kit broker here, the one, if my mouse is visible, each one is an individual document, and each individual document basically runs in effectively a LibreOffice. So that's a LibreOffice, that's another LibreOffice, separate one for each document. So there's two documents open here. And the way this works is generally because the startup time for LibreOffice is pretty slow, is that we have this forkit thing here in advance that basically starts LibreOffice 98% of the way up, and then copies and clones itself, forks and clones itself, so that you have a 98% initialized LibreOffice and just needs one small few modifications at the end, and then you can load the document. So loading the document is a pretty quick process. Right here, we've got one that doesn't have a document yet, so you have these spare kits are ready to roll. All they need is just to be given a document and they can load it up immediately. So this forkit manages this. You have one col.WSD, one forkit that generates LibreOffices to open documents and has them ready to do that as quickly as possible. So it's all a pretty quick open document, and that's the crucial part of this arrangement. Um, So things get complicated after that, in the sense that this col.WSD is just running like a normal process, the bucket is a normal process, and then these ones here are inside in their own CH root jail, in the sense that they can't access the file system outside of the subdirectory that they have been confined to, along with additional jailing techniques around that. This becomes a problem in a bit, but in any case, each LibreOffice is each kit can be seen as a LibreOffice that has it's in its first start. So each one is created from scratch. Each one is like an uninitialized, no default initialization state, and there's no changes made to them. So each time you open up a document, you're right back to the same state of the environment that is the case when you open a new document. So, for example, if you're inside the document, there's a word that's misspelled, you right click on it and you say ignore. That's only the case for this particular session. The next time you open the document, you'll be right back where you started again, and you have the same red lines underneath the words that were redlined the last time, even if you said they should be ignored or added to your personal dictionary, because everything is thrown away right after your document is closed. So, what we wanted to do here is to allow an organization to provide the default auto texts and user spelling dictionaries for all of their users. So every user will start up with preset auto text and spell checking dictionaries and settings and so forth. And then if somebody makes modifications to their user dictionary, that they're stored and restored the next time they load up a document. So we have to have a place to put all of that, and then a way to put all those into these kits that we've seen earlier. And we want to do this pretty quickly so that we don't lose the optimization we have of having a uh, pre-initialized, ready to roll forkit and initialized spare kits ready to use for documents, so that their load time is still pretty quick. Just a little kind of overview of what that might look like then is that you have a single Clever Online, you have maybe two different organizations with their own WAPI servers with the documents on them, and then they have individual users. So you'd have this institutional level shared settings, and then you'd have user level individual settings that would be different again. So you'd have pre-canned auto text for your company, and then each individual user would have their own additional ones and their own spell checking dictionaries, etc., etc. So that's kind of the rough overview of that. So this is what it now looks like with this support, is that we still have our single cool WSD. We have this fork kit generates things, and now we have sub fork kits. So this one derives from this one. The sub fork kit derives from fork kit and then adds on the institutional changes. So you'd have the AutoText or shared AutoText are put in there, shared user dictionaries are put in there, and then shared settings can be applied in those. And then from that, then all the individual user documents can be generated as they were in the past pretty quickly. And then individual user settings can be applied to each one individually. So this is the new arrangement here, where we have this extra level gone in here. So your grandfather fork kit remains, and it then can generate sub fork kits. Or if there is no config setting at all, and the Moppy server doesn't support or doesn't use any kind of shared config, then the normal normal default configuration ones can be used for that situation. Subforkit then has a kind of a shared config in it. It's intended to be just basically long lived. So once you open up a document from a server with a particular config, it's likely that there will be more documents opened up from that server. So we keep around that shared level subforkit for a pretty long time, which is configurable, but it's like in terms of hours. Also, the data that we're pulling down to populate these configurations and data is generally going to be pretty much the same from one run to the next. So we cache all that data locally. So generally we end up making kind of one network request to pull down the shared configuration data. And then if that is unchanged, we just use the copies we have left locally to populate it. And the same is true for the user kits. So that is a layer caching as well as a layer of keeping things around. So how does this kind of fit in the way things work? When you open up a document on something like Nextcloud or whatnot, you get this check file info JSON file that describes things. So that's been extended to include this optional data about this shared configuration or this user configuration, and it comes with some tags or e tag to indicate to identify that this configuration is the same as one you've seen before. So if you can just get your in the ideal situation, you get your check file info, you have a look at the shared and user settings in it, and you can see that they have a tag that identifies them as being one you've already seen before, and you can go straight to your cache and you can populate these spare kits from that and move on without doing any kind of an additional network transfer. If they're not available, then we launch downloads to download the bits and wait until they show up. We fire them off in parallel, and once they all arrive back down, then we can move to the next state. If it's the case as the first time we've seen this shared config, then we have to wait until that sub fork kit is spun up. And if it's the case that we have seen that shared config and it's just a user config and we haven't seen that before, then again, we just wait until that additional for user data is down and we install them into the destination the kit broker and launch the document from that. Versus LibreOffice, this is backing itself onto the pre-existing split that exists in LibreOffice. LibreOffice already comes with the concept of a kind of a shared area. So you'd have typically installed into multi-user Linux thingy. The idea is that there's a shared config that goes into the kind of read-only system area, and then there's a per user config, the one you have in your own personal.config directory. So this split of a shared or system one versus an individual user one is already there. So we're just following in those footsteps and just reusing that in a more unusual way. It's probably worth noting that LibreOffice also has this presets idea. So when you first launch LibreOffice and you don't have any config, then you get a default config which comes from the presets there that you'll find inside in LibreOffice install. So this is kind of similar in that sense, except that the presets are supplied by this machinery that I mentioned previously, instead of creating the presets from this static location on the typical install. Um, for the usual case, what we have is various directories that exist in LibreOffice that you can extend or add to. So there's a big list of directories for AutoText, and a big list of directories for where you search for various things. In most of these cases, there is a kind of some of these cases there's a per language one, and most of their cases there's a kind of a common one that exists as well. So what we're doing here is we're generally splicing our new config onto one of these common directories so that when LibreOffice looks for it, it finds these new things. Um, and additionally to the stuff we mentioned here, once this thing exists, it gives us a place to put things. So we have a place to put back modified user dictionaries. There's also this various settings in the browser as well. So if you're in Clever Online and you click, say, the dark mode button or show hide sidebar, things like that, those settings traditionally existed inside your browser in one of those available browser cookie, etc. User storage areas. So this now has a new place we could additionally store things. So we do. So we store the browser config in this new location if it's available, which means that previously, if you move from one browser to the other, you don't have the browser level settings you had in the past, but now you do. So if you're on Firefox and you change dark mode, you open up Chromium and you open up the same document, then you get the same browser level settings as well. So it's an additional plus that comes along with this. And another part of it then, along with the AutoText and the user dictionaries, is that there is the very traditional LibreOffice XCU configuration data that's supported as well. So you can also make modifications that you can make through your tools options are available to be modified as well. They're limited to a certain set of things at the moment, but that's just what we decided to do as opposed to being a fundamental issue. Yeah, nothing is ever simple with any of these things. Yeah, so just kind of an example of one of these things needs to be worked through is that at the start I mentioned that the fork kit is standard use deliver process, and then we've cloned that to create kit brokers, all of which live in their own CH root jail. Is that because of that, the first initialization takes place outside the jail. So at initialization time, various things are detected and the paths are detected and things like that. So they all refer to the location as they were outside the jail. So when it's forked and the new copy inside the jail, a lot of these paths have been left behind and are still pointing to locations outside the jail, which didn't matter in the past because we weren't using AutoText, we weren't using user dictionaries, and they were thrown away afterwards. But since this thing, it becomes more obvious that these paths are out of date. So there's some work done there that after you fork and you're inside in your jail, that we now kind of reinitialize some of these things just to get them to realize their new location. So once they reinitialize, they know their new path to the AutoText and dictionaries, which means then that the next step is that you can reinitialize or refresh your dictionary list, and it will search the new location and pick up the ones that have been installed afterwards. Non-trivial to figure that out, but it won't get there in the end. So that's problems with that. So that then gives you the ability then to install or use dictionaries and AutoText and things like that. And then once you make modifications to them here as well, then there has to be a way to get those modifications back out of your particular instance, bring them back up to that WAPI server and store them so that the next document that's opened will be pre-installed with the same dictionary that you've modified. So this persistence now exists as well. You can add to a particular dictionary that can be saved back up again. To manage that, we don't have the tools options that are in the kind of traditional LibreOffice. We have a separate frame that goes into the Moppy servers, whatever integrators, admin pages and settings pages. So that then exists inside their settings pages. It's served from col.la. So two sides of that there. It comes from col.la and it is shown inside in their settings and can be customized to fit in with the look and feel there. And then there's two steps. There's the admin ones, which allows you to change the shared ones I've mentioned, and then there's a per user one where each individual user can modify settings of AutoText or dictionaries and things like that. You can add, you can delete, you can download them, things like that. So have a screenshot of maybe kind of an earlier version of that, and it shows you just how this integrates there. What I might do as well, I might risk a quick demo. Let's see if that works out. Let's just see that sample document. It's poorly spelled. Let's just show that this F3 is the AutoText expansion that doesn't auto-expand anything as it's not installed yet. Let's just close that document. Show the personal settings here. This frame here is the one that's mentioned in the text. You can upload an AutoText and pick one here like that, AutoText like that. Now we go back over, open up that document again, and then your AutoText is expanded out like that. Similarly then, now if you were to add dictionary, you get this one here, Apple Dic. You'll see over here listed the word books using dictionaries. I have one installed there, and I can click on it correctly. I can add the dictionary, I can save that, and no longer underlined. Finally, it's no great achievement, but there it is. It comes back up, and the auto user dictionary has been saved and restored, and your favorite spellings are now persistent. And I think that is basically it. I would like to actually thank the people who did the real work here. Rash and Vivek did most of this, so that's kudos to them rather than person who ended up presenting. Okay, thank you. If there's any questions, let me know.
Thank you, Caolan, for the presentation and people who worked on this. Now, question, guys, a short questions.
Yeah, no questions. This has been a long sought after feature, so it's great to see it happen. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Joao. Questions?
No questions for me.
Andras?
So do we still save the settings to the browser storage? And if the two settings are different, which one is taken?
Well, that'd be a question for Rash, but my understanding is the ones from the server are win over the ones in your browser. Don't think we save them both if support exists. If support doesn't exist, we still save to the browser. If support exists, I think we just save to the server.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andras. Next, Attila?
Thank you, no questions.
Thank you, Miklos.
I would have a question. It's not 100% related to this, but we had this pre-existing problem that during debugging, it's always non-trivial to find which kit process you want to attach to for profiling and debugger and so on. And my understanding is that we have this spare kit process, and you load one document, so you have two of these kit things. And if you do it correctly, then you find the right one, or else you attach to the wrong one. And now that we have this sub 4 kits, then we have two of these spare things and the real document in the one document case. So we now have two spare documents where nothing will happen and it's not where you want to attach to. Do you know of a way for, mostly for debugging purposes, a way to avoid these spare processes so that we would have just a single one and then life would be easier? Or you always do this down thread, sending the SIG user one and then seeing the output and then
Well,
the debugger based on that?
I suppose what I would do off the top of my head is I would just use the PS3 to take a look at which of the spare kits is the one that I'm interested in, and it will be the one that's the child of the sub-for kit in debugging case. In the debugging case, we emulate this scenario and we have one config. So if make run will generate one sub-for kit for you, and then your first child, your spare, the spare kit will be the one that's a child of that. So I would just use PS3, look at it that way. Otherwise, you can, and maybe this is another option for an environmental variable, we can just go to where we claim we have this shared setting support from our own emulation of check file info output, and just disable it, and then we don't have the shared config setting there, in which case we don't generate the sub-for kit. So that's another more hacky option.
Thanks. Like just the PS3 is already an improvement. I naively always did PS, which is not showing you the difference between the spare and the real kit process. So just using PS3 is already an improvement. Thanks.
And I think PS3 is handy as well, because there's it's a PLT. I always just run it with the PLT option, and the T option will give you the thread names as well. So it's a nice overview to see what threads we have as well, and the names are shown, which makes it kind of obvious architecturally wise where the doc broker lives versus, and what all the processes are doing, because the PS kind of lacks that, which is annoying.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Banobe, questions?
This is a nice class.
No questions, Anna. Thank you, Caolan.
Thank you. Berem? Okay. Darshan?
No questions. Thanks, Caolan.
Ezine? Okay. Jaume? Justine? Okay. Mevan?
Yes, I was curious. So it's more like, what can we do next thanks to this environment? Like a feature that has been asked for users is like saving viewing context of documents, like which sheet you are on, which page you are on, or which ordering you have applied on a certain column to be per user saved. I can imagine that's definitely a mouthful still, but I can see that this feature at least could be a stepping stone. Am I correct?
Yeah, perhaps. I know what kind of desktop wise what happens is that a lot of those settings end up getting stored in the document, like the last place the editor was in the document is saved, and then the kind of ID of the user is saved. So if you reopen lots of documents and you happen to have the same username as the person who saved it, then you're restored to page 400. And then that causes a lot of problems, or at least in the past, where say calc documents have various settings that are stored in them, and then when they're saved and opened on online, some of the defaults depend arbitrarily on how the document was saved, and it doesn't really fit well for online to assume the zoom is 400% and give you a default 400% zoom just because the last person who opened it was on 400% zoom. So there is the ability to store those per document settings in core, but they go into the document. So you could certainly see that there is the ability to put it someplace else. And then you put it into the browser config, which is basically your per user config, which is fine. But then you end up with the same thing that you have with the Collabor kind of config, with the LibreOffice config, is that it grows out of bounds then. So maybe this might need a third place, some kind of per document, per user thing. So yeah. So I'm surely a stepping stone to it, but I don't think it's a quick fix.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mevan. Thank you, Caolan. 2 more questions.
Yes, I have one.
Mm-hmm.
So let's imagine a situation which is very realistic, that someone wants to use this and doesn't have an xCloud, but some kind of custom integration. What did they need to do? Like, I assume that as I already opened that would be SDK, right? Explanation. And let's say, generally speaking, how much of coding or preparing do they need to do? Like, some folks will surely be like confused about saying that, okay, if you have a custom integration, can we use other Nextcloud server, which I assume it's not possible, right? So everyone wanting that probably need to do something to prepare the custom integration WAPI for this.
Yeah, well, I suppose I didn't do that part of it. Vivek did that part of it, so he'd probably have a better feel for how much work is involved. But there is, of course, his sample commit to look at, and the modifications are, as I said, one of the earlier slides is this check file info, which is fairly, I think, fairly standardized, or at least a common way of doing things. And we extended the way I mentioned earlier with these 2 locations, and then the 2 locations just take in and out a fairly basic kind of a JSON structure. So I don't think what needs to be done is particularly difficult to conceptually, but I wouldn't have any idea of how much work is involved with each individual integrator. If they've been able to do the integration already for some of the features, like the font download one, then this is very similar. So if they have support for that, they just basically probably really need to rework the support for the other thing for this instead.
Timur?
No, thank you. That was good. Maybe Vivek is there, huh?
Yeah. So I was mentioning that I'll be preparing some docs which can help you to integrate anywhere. So the main thing is already mentioned by Caolan, is like we have an iframe. If you want to use that same iframe, then you have to need that URL, and then other thing is just a check file info that you need to pass. So everything else you need to handle from an integrator side. So yep, I'll be trying to create a document for that.
Thank you, Vivek. Raj, do you want to add something?
No, nothing from me.
Okay, thank you, everyone. See you next week. Bye-bye.